For 20 years, Gunsmoke wasn't just a TV show. It was like America's favorite place to be. Families would run to the couch every week to watch adventures in a town called Dodge City, with a hero named Marshal Matt Dillon. And nobody played a hero better than James Arness. He was calm, strong, and always did the right thing. But when it was time for his last scene as Dillon, fans didn't just watch. They really felt it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't big and dramatic. It was quiet, powerful, and full of feelings. The kind you only get when you're saying goodbye to someone you love. What happened at the end? And what made that final moment so special? And was it really as emotional as fans say? Join us as we take a closer look at Gunsmoke and learn the truth behind the goodbye, how the actors felt, and the behind-the-scenes stories fans never heard before. The show that showed everyone what the Wild West was like. Gunsmoke was not just another TV show. It was the Western that showed everyone else how to make a good Western. The story happened in Dodge City, Kansas, way back in the 1870s, when the Wild West was still wild and full of danger. At the center of it all was Marshal Matt Dillon, a calm, brave police officer who always stood up for what was right. On the radio, he was played by William Conrad, and on television, James Arness brought the character to life. The radio show ran from 1952 to 1961, and people loved it. One person who studies old radio shows even said, "Gunsmoke is usually put among the best shows of any kind and any time." That shows how special it was from the very beginning. When CBS first started the show on radio, it ran without any companies paying for it. The TV station paid for it because they believed in it, and soon they were right to believe. In 1955, the show moved to television and became super popular. It first showed as a half-hour show. Then in 1961, it got bigger to a one-hour show, which meant that viewers just couldn't get enough. And they didn't. Gunsmoke was on TV for 20 seasons and made 635 episodes, making it the longest-running scripted American primetime series at the time. For years, families sat around their TV screens to watch Matt Dillon fight dangerous bad guys, protect innocent people in town, and bring justice to the frontier. It became more than just entertainment. It became part of American culture. A writer from the Los Angeles Times once called it our own Iliad and Odyssey, comparing it to ancient hero stories. That is how deeply Gunsmoke touched people. But while the show brought excitement and drama on screen, the real story of Gunsmoke's journey was filled with surprises and big changes too. Growing and changing with TV, Gunsmoke didn't just stay the same the whole time it was on. It grew and changed as television itself changed. In the beginning, from 1955 to 1961, it was a black-and-white half-hour show. Later, when TV got better, Gunsmoke got better too. It became a one-hour show, giving fans more time to enjoy life in Dodge City each week. The older half-hour episodes were shown again later under the name Marshal Dillon. Many fans grew up watching those reruns, keeping the spirit of the show alive even after new episodes stopped. Over time, different TV channels kept showing the show again because people never stopped wanting to watch it. TV stations like TV Land, MTV, and others kept Gunsmoke on air, introducing it to new kids and families. Even outside the U.S., the show was popular. In the United Kingdom, it was called Gun Law, showing how many people around the world watched it. But it wasn't just the episodes that kept the show going. After the main series ended, 5 special TV movies were made with the actors coming back, giving fans one more chance to ride along with Matt Dillon. The show even won 15 Primetime Emmy Awards, which showed just how much Hollywood respected it. With all this success, you would think Gunsmoke would get a big farewell. But the ending came in a way no one expected, and the actors were completely surprised. A sudden ending nobody saw coming. After 20 years on television, fans thought Gunsmoke would keep going for many more seasons. The actors felt the same way. They had built their lives around the show, and every week felt like another chapter in a long, steady journey. But in 1975, the TV station made a choice that shocked everyone. CBS decided not to make a 21st season of Gunsmoke. There was no warning, no goodbye, and no final episode to say farewell to the characters everyone loved. James Arness later explained, "We didn't do a final wrap-up show. We finished the 20th year. We all expected to go on for another season or 2 or 3. The TV station never told anybody they were thinking of canceling. Instead of hearing it from the studio, the actors and crew found out from the newspapers. Imagine working on a show for 20 years only to learn it ended from reading the news. It was a sudden ending to a show that changed television history. But even though the show stopped, the story of Marshall Dillon didn't end there. The made-for-TV movies helped give fans closure, especially the emotional final scenes that stayed in people's hearts. And even today, viewers still watch Matt Dillon walk those dusty streets, protecting Dodge City the way only he could. That lasting love sets the stage for one more important moment. The final scene that brought fans right back into Dillon's world, making them feel like they were saying goodbye to an old friend. But what exactly made that final ride so unforgettable? And why do people still talk about it today? Before we talk about that, let's take a look at some surprising behind-the-scenes facts not many people know. John Wayne's surprise role in picking the actor. When Gunsmoke was being made, Westerns were the biggest thing in Hollywood. And the biggest cowboy star in the world at that time was John Wayne. Most fans know the studio first wanted Wayne to play Marshal Matt Dillon. But here's the twist many people don't know. John Wayne himself helped James Arness get the role. James Arness once shared, "I was under contract to Duke's company for 2 years before Gunsmoke came along." He explained that he had already made a few movies with Wayne before the offer came. The studio really wanted Wayne, but he said no because he didn't want to leave movies for television. Instead of just walking away, Wayne told the studio about Arness, saying, "I have a young man here under contract who I think would maybe fit the bill." That simple suggestion changed TV history. Arness became Marshal Dillon, and the role made him a legend. Meanwhile, John Wayne continued his movie career and starred in classics like The Searchers, The Longest Day, and True Grit. It is almost funny to think about it. If Wayne had taken the job, Gunsmoke would have looked very different, and Arness might never have become the star fans love today. But Arness's journey was not simple either, because at first he was not sure if he should take the part. The hardest role to find an actor for. Believe it or not, finding the right actor to play Matt Dillon was not easy. Every actor in Hollywood seemed to want the part. William Conrad, who played Dillon on the radio version, hoped to get the TV role too. But even though he had the voice, producers thought he did not look right for television. Another actor who tried out was Raymond Burr, who fans later knew as Perry Mason, but the director was not impressed. He even joked, when he stood up, his chair stood up with him, meaning Burr seemed too big for the part. Finding the right person was turning into a long, tiring search. Then John Wayne mentioned James Arness, and suddenly things changed. Still, Arness almost didn't take the role. In a 2002 interview, he shared that someone warned him he might ruin his movie career by doing a TV show. A director told him, "If you get stuck in a television series like a Western thing and it goes a couple of seasons and then dies, you'll be in bad trouble in the movies." It was a scary thought. Arness was young and starting to build his name in films. But luckily, he trusted his gut feeling and took the role anyway. That decision made history. And while Arness stepped into the lead role, another major role on the show took a very different path in finding an actor. The Miss Kitty role that almost went to someone else. Amanda Blake became famous as Miss Kitty Russell, the strong and charming saloon owner in Gunsmoke. But she was not the first choice. Before Blake, actress Polly Bond was offered the part. And here comes the surprising part. She turned it down because she felt she was being paid too much. That may sound strange today, but at the time people expected husbands to earn more money than wives. Polly Bond's husband, Tommy Bond, who played Butch in The Little Rascals, was also an actor. The thought of making more money than her husband made her uncomfortable, so she said no to the job. Sadly for her, her career did not go far. Amanda Blake took the role instead, and she became one of the most popular faces on television. Meanwhile, Miss Kitty became one of the most famous characters in Western history. Decisions like this remind us how one choice can change a life, and sometimes even TV history. And speaking of changing lives, some actors walked into the Gunsmoke studio as unknown people and walked out as stars. But who were they? Famous people before they were stars. Because Gunsmoke ran for 20 years and had more than 600 episodes, it needed a lot of guest actors. That meant countless people came through Dodge City, and many of them later became huge stars. Richard Dreyfuss appeared in a 1973 episode as a young character dealing with sadness, long before he became known for movies like Jaws. Sam Elliott, who later became famous for his deep voice and cowboy roles, also appeared on the show in the early 1970s. Even young Jodie Foster acted in 3 episodes as a child. And then there's one of the biggest names in movie history, Harrison Ford. Long before Star Wars and Indiana Jones, he showed up in 2 Gunsmoke episodes in 1972 and 1973. Other future stars like Ron Howard, Kurt Russell, Dennis Hopper, Nick Nolte, and Adam West also appeared. But the surprises don't end there. Many familiar faces from Star Trek also walked through Dodge City. William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, James Doohan, and DeForest Kelley, all from the original Star Trek, were on Gunsmoke too. And the list goes on, including actors from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The connection even reached behind the camera. Jerry Goldsmith, who later wrote the famous Star Trek theme music, worked on 2 episodes of Gunsmoke. With so many legends touching this show, it is no wonder Gunsmoke became such a strong part of TV history. But while stars came and went, one thing stayed the same: the fans. And they played a bigger role than you might expect. Letters from fans that changed everything. Gunsmoke fans were loyal and their voices mattered. Fan campaigns today are common, but in the 1950s and 60s it was rare for viewers to change a show. Yet Gunsmoke fans did just that. Milburn Stone, who played Doc Adams, once found out through letters from real doctors that some of his medical lines didn't make sense. Instead of ignoring it, he started doing research to make sure his character sounded real. Fans also touched Amanda Blake's life in a big way. After she left the show, she struggled to find work. But one day, she read a heartfelt fan letter from a young girl who said she prayed for Miss Kitty. Blake later said, "It was so moving and so touching that I found new strength to keep going." Those simple words from a child helped her feel confident again. That is the kind of deep connection Gunsmoke built with its audience, and it shows why the show stayed popular for so long. But did you know that not all characters on Gunsmoke were written exactly as they appeared on screen? How Dennis Weaver created Chester. Chester Good, played by Dennis Weaver, is a perfect example. When Weaver first tried out for the part, he acted the character as a serious role, but producers quickly told him the part was supposed to be funny. Weaver admitted he didn't understand at first. Later, he remembered someone from his college days, a student with a thick accent who always made people laugh. "I used to imitate him at parties," Weaver said, explaining how the memory suddenly made sense. So he asked for another chance, saying, "I think I know what you mean. Will you give me another chance?" He tried again using that unique accent, and Chester was born. But Weaver didn't stop there. He even came up with Chester's famous limp. It helped make the character stand out. But it came with a problem he never expected. Fans began writing letters, worried that Weaver was actually hurt. They thought something was truly wrong with his leg. While the limp added personality, Weaver later said he regretted it because people thought he was hurt in real life. And Weaver wasn't the only one on the show dealing with a limp. But one of them came from a very real place: James Arness and his war injuries. While Chester's limp was part of the acting, James Arness had a different story. His uneven walk came from real injuries he got in World War II. Arness returned home from the war still dealing with pain, and it affected his work on Gunsmoke. Many scenes required the marshal to walk long distances or stand for long periods, which was hard for him. According to reports, the crew had to plan filming carefully. Scenes that needed lots of walking were often shot earlier in the day when Arness had more strength. They also gave him breaks to rest between shots. The challenge grew as the show continued for 20 seasons and Arness got older. Even getting on a horse became difficult at times. But despite pain and long hours, he kept going. His dedication was one of the reasons fans loved him. He brought real toughness to the role. And while Arness worked through physical struggles, the show itself was shaping culture in ways nobody expected, including giving the world one very famous phrase. Some lines from TV shows fade away, while others become part of everyday life. Gunsmoke helped make popular one of the most famous sayings from Western culture: "Get out of Dodge." Today, people say it when they want to leave a dangerous or messy situation fast. It sounds dramatic, but that's what made it fun. The phrase existed before the show, but Gunsmoke made it famous around the world. Millions of viewers watched the lawmen of Dodge City keep order, so the phrase naturally stuck. People loved using it, especially when joking with friends. And even though it may have originally meant warning troublemakers to stay away, fans turned it into a catchy way to say, "Let's get out of here." But that's not the only surprising thing Gunsmoke inspired. The show also made its way into an unexpected place: comic books. From TV screens to comic pages. Long before big movie universes and superhero crossovers, it was rare to see TV shows turned into comic books. But Gunsmoke was so popular it made the leap. Dell Comics first included it in one of their series, and soon it became its own title. For 4 years, fans could follow Marshall Dillon's adventures not just on television, but also on paper. The show's success didn't stop in America. Even the United Kingdom got its own version. Over there, the story appeared as a comic strip under the title Gun Law. That comic ran in newspapers every day, and it stayed in print longer than the US version, ending in 1978, 3 years after the show went off TV. It wasn't the kind of flashy superhero story we see today, but it showed how deeply Gunsmoke sat in the hearts of viewers. Yet even comic book fame wasn't the most surprising part of the show's influence. Believe it or not, one of the biggest TV comedies ever, Gilligan's Island, was directly affected by Gunsmoke. When Gunsmoke saved its spot during Gunsmoke's long run, another show was getting more popular. Gilligan's Island. Lighthearted, funny, and completely different from the Western world of Dodge City. It quickly became a hit. It even started getting higher ratings than Gunsmoke, but then came drama behind the scenes. According to Gilligan's Island actress Dawn Wells, the TV station originally planned to cancel Gunsmoke instead of her show. Gilligan's Island was set to take the time slot, but one powerful voice changed everything. The wife of the CBS board chairman returned from vacation, heard Gunsmoke had been canceled, and was not happy. She told the network, "You can't cancel Gunsmoke. It's my favorite show." That was it. Gunsmoke was saved, and instead Gilligan's Island was canceled after 3 seasons. It was an emotional moment for everyone involved. Imagine being on a show that's doing well only to lose your spot, because another show had strong supporters behind the scenes. It shows how powerful loyalty can be both on and off screen. Fans loved Gunsmoke, and so did people in high places. That loyalty helped the show stay on air for 20 seasons, giving us all the stories and memories we still celebrate today. Milburn Stone nearly walked away. The role of Doc Adams became one of the most loved characters on Gunsmoke, but it almost never happened. Milburn Stone was first offered the part, and instead of saying yes right away, he actually wanted to say no. Why? Because he had a long-running fight with Charles Marquis Warren, who helped create the show and worked as writer, producer, and director. Stone made this clear when he once said, "There's no stage big enough to hold Charles Marquis Warren and me." He explained that they had worked together before on a project in Texas, and it went terribly. He said they didn't get along at all. So when the Gunsmoke team asked Stone to test for the part of Doc Adams, he pushed back hard. At first he said, "No way!" But the studio was not going to give up easily. They convinced him to join the show. Still, Stone wanted more than just a role. He wanted fairness. He looked around Hollywood and saw actors from old shows on reruns while their families got nothing. He said, "I see dead friends of mine working on television every night, and their families are starving." This made it personal for him. He stood firm and demanded lifetime residuals. In the end, the studio agreed and Milburn Stone took the role. That decision changed TV history. But saying yes to the job was just the start, because once he stepped into Dodge City, another storm was waiting for him. When Doc couldn't stand the Marshal, even though they became a legendary on-screen team, Milburn Stone didn't like James Arness at the beginning. In fact, he admitted, "I spent the first 3 years hating Jim." Stone didn't like how Arness worked when the show first started. He said Arness was late, sometimes didn't show up, and when he did arrive, he would clown around instead of getting serious. For Stone, this was not professional at all. He told Arness that they were diametrically opposed, meaning they were total opposites in how they worked. He even said he felt Arness didn't belong in the business. Stone finally reached a breaking point. One day, he warned Arness, "If you ever show up late again, buddy, you'll have two things to explain. Not only where you were, but where I went." It was a bold line, especially to say to the show's star. But instead of fighting back or getting angry, Arness surprised him. After Stone finished, Arness looked him right in the eye and said, "You're absolutely right." That moment changed everything. Stone later shared that after that talk, he began to love that guy. He called Arness a great big wonderful cub bear. Soon the two men worked together in harmony, proving that sometimes tough conversations build real respect. Their bond helped strengthen the show, and audiences had no idea such strong drama was happening behind the cameras. And while the cast solved their differences, a very different kind of storm was brewing on TV screens across America. The Western that wouldn't quit. Gunsmoke wasn't just a Western show. It ruled television. Long before modern Westerns like Yellowstone or Justified, this series set the standard. It lasted 20 years, and many people consider it the greatest Western series ever made. It introduced young actors who later became legends like Burt Reynolds, Kurt Russell, Jodie Foster, Harrison Ford, and more. Even decades after it was canceled, Gunsmoke climbed back into the top 10 streaming shows in the US, proving that its legacy never faded. But what many fans still talk about is how the show ended, or rather, how it didn't end. In 1975, Westerns weren't as popular anymore. Crime shows and detective dramas were taking over network television. Ratings for Gunsmoke began slipping, especially after Burt Reynolds left the cast in 1965. Instead of giving the show a planned wrap-up or letting it slowly finish, CBS suddenly canceled it. No warning, no build-up, no farewell. Even the cast didn't know. James Arness and Milburn Stone, who had been there from the very first episode, didn't get a final goodbye scene. Fans were stunned, and many felt the ending didn't honor what the show had meant to American television. The final episode, The Sharecroppers, didn't even focus on Marshall Dillon or Doc Adams. Instead, it followed Festus Hagen in a light story that almost felt like a side tale. For a show that introduced the world to the hard, dusty life of the Old West, the ending felt soft and many called it disrespectful to the characters who shaped the series. But even though the final episode fell short, the spirit of Gunsmoke was too strong to fade quietly. And years later, something big happened to fix that. A farewell that took nearly 2 decades. For many years after Gunsmoke went off the air, fans waited, hoping for a real ending. They loved the characters too much to accept such a sudden goodbye. And almost 19 years later, they finally got what they wished for. A special TV movie was made. A true finale that gave Marshall Dillon and the world of Gunsmoke the closure it deserved. It wasn't just another Western movie. It was a chance to say goodbye the right way. The show that had defined a generation finally received the honor it had earned. Fans who grew up watching Gunsmoke could finally feel like the story they loved had a proper ending. And for younger viewers discovering it later, it became clear why this show still stands tall as one of the greatest Western series ever made. But while the ending finally came, the real story lies in the journey. The cast battles, the near-miss careers, and the forgotten emotions behind the scenes. And at the heart of it all was one towering figure, James Arness, who carried the badge longer than any TV marshal in history. Now the big question remains, how did his very last scene truly play out? And what made it so unforgettable? When Gunsmoke ended in 1975, fans were left without a real goodbye. The final TV episode did not give Marshal Matt Dillon the honor he deserved. But the story did not stay unfinished forever. Years later, Gunsmoke returned, not as a full show, but through 5 TV movies in the late 1980s and early 1990s. And the last one, Gunsmoke, One Man's Justice, finally gave James Arness the ending fans had been waiting for. This movie treated Dillon the way he always deserved, as a wise, older lawman who had seen life, learned from it, and still stood strong. In the story, Dillon tries to help a young boy avoid the same mistakes he once made. It shows a softer side of him, but also a deeper strength. Then comes the scene fans never forgot. At the climax, it looks like the villain, Josh Reardon, might escape justice. The young men around Dylan freeze up in fear, but Dylan doesn't. With steady hands and calm courage, he raises his gun. One shot, one hit, and then the line that wrapped up 20 years of TV history. "I got him." Simple words, but powerful. It was the kind of ending the original series never gave him. Strong, quiet, and full of dignity. Sadly, Milburn Stone Doc Adams wasn't there for this final moment. He had passed away 14 years before the movie. But even without him, James Arness carried the spirit of Gunsmoke one last time. And after nearly 2 decades of waiting, the West finally had its goodbye. But the impact of Gunsmoke didn't end there. Because even after the dust settled in Dodge City, the show continued to shape the entire Western world. A legacy that shaped Westerns forever. Even today, Gunsmoke stands as one of the most important Western shows ever made, and its influence stretches far beyond its final episode. In December 2024, the show hit a new streaming platform and immediately climbed into the top 10 most-watched lists in the United States. That doesn't happen unless a story truly lasts. And Gunsmoke didn't just entertain viewers, it helped build careers and change Hollywood. Without it, Clint Eastwood's path might have looked very different. His series Rawhide, which helped launch him into superstardom, was created by one of Gunsmoke's early producers, and Kurt Russell's famous role in the movie Tombstone. That line back to Gunsmoke is clear too. Russell first acted on the show when he was only 13, long before he became a Western icon. From classic Western movies to new school series like those created by Taylor Sheridan, and even the spaghetti westerns of Sergio Leone, the DNA of Gunsmoke is everywhere. Many say the modern Western world owes a debt to Marshall Dillon and the streets of Dodge City. As one fan put it, it's impossible to measure just how far Gunsmoke's influence reaches. And even after decades of television changes, streaming wars, and new genres, audiences are still writing back to Dodge, proving that some legends never fade. Do you think James Arness's final scene gave the show the farewell it deserved? Or would you have wanted a different ending? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.